Welcome back. Paul Catalina, 365 Sports. Smokeless Friday continues. We're not in the smoking section. I can do puns all day long. I don't know if it's not the lowest form of comedy. It's like the medium low level, but I can do it all day. Sam Kahn of The Athletic joins us now. And Sam, I'll get your thoughts on a couple things from last week before we dive into this week. First off, A&M versus Notre Dame. Did your view of A&M change any at all after that game, especially given how Connor Wegman struggled?
Yeah, a little bit. They're not going to be as explosive offensively, I don't think, as we all anticipated them to be. I think we viewed, and certainly I viewed A&M as a possible dark horse college football playoff team coming into this year because of the level of talent that Mike Elko inherited. There's still a lot of talent on that roster. But watching them against a high-level team like Notre Dame last week, it laid clear where the holes are on the roster and a couple places in particular, one at receiver where they've got good receivers, but they don't have what I would consider game breakers yet. There's not a burner necessarily that's going to blow the top off the opposing defense. So that's one thing that I think that's going to hinder them in SEC play. And then Connor Wegman struggled certainly, and he doesn't seem to me like a really great fit for that offense. Colin Klein, we know, does a lot of quarterback run game, likes to do the QB power, QB counter. And Connor's a scrambler, but I don't think of him as a natural runner in the way that maybe an Avery Johnson or a Will Howard or some of the guys that have played in that offense before. So to me, even I think some of it was jitters for the being back for the first time for that injury, but also I just think it seems like an awkward fit, and I'm curious to see as the weeks go on, is he a better fit? Defensively, I think they're going to be fine. So I think this is still going to be a good team. They're going to be a really good defense. I think they're just going to have to win some games ugly, and I'm probably pumping the brakes on how good I think they can be this year. I think they're probably more of like an 8-4 team as I see it now.
A friend of mine texted me and said Riley Leonard is more like Colin Klein than Colin Klein's actual quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it really looked like that. Now to this week, Texas goes to Michigan. I really would have liked to see the last year's Michigan roster and all this against Texas. I think that would have been a great game. I still think that's going to be tough for them, but it seems to me like they could win by 2 scores, given the offense, the difference between Michigan's offense, Michigan's defense, Texas's offense, Texas's defense.
Yeah, I think the only way Michigan keeps this game close is if their defensive line really wreaks havoc on Texas up front. The matchup I'm watching inside is Mason Graham against that interior offensive line for Texas. I think Graham is terrific. Kenneth Grant is terrific. Michigan really can make this an ugly, low-scoring game, a grinded-out type. And if they do that, then Michigan actually, I think, has a shot. But I just don't think that Michigan has enough firepower to keep up with Texas, and I don't think they can shut them down forever. I think that they'll be disruptive. I think they'll make it ugly early on. But I think eventually the speed and the explosiveness that Texas has on the perimeter, I'm not as worried about the running back anymore, even though C.J. Baxter's gone after seeing last week. Like Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner, Jarrett Gibson's a big guy. He's 205. He looks all of 205. I think they just have so many weapons that it's going to be hard to keep them down. And Steve Sarkisian said earlier this week, they got 46 of these guys who are going on this trip that went to Tuscaloosa last year. That's a lot of carryover and a lot of experience, the same staff, the same coordinators. That is a huge advantage for them against a Michigan team that's very much in transition. I think still trying to find its way. And I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be a particularly close game.
How scared should the folks in Lubbock be right now about their defense, given they gave up 51 last week, and they're going to play a Washington State team that is going to play the same kind of offense that they do? You know, Coach Arbuckle up there, the offensive coordinator, is going to be, winging the ball around, and Ben Arbuckle is his name, going to be winging the ball around a ton, just like Zach Kitley is, and they're going to be high-flying offenses on either side. Should they be nervous, or was last week just kind of a weird one?
No, I'd be a little nervous. This is not an easy game going up to Pullman. It's going to be a night game. This is, I wrote it and I did a thing about the Big 12 this week and the games this week. I think this has got Pac-12 after dark vibes written all over it.
Mhm.
You know, it's the Mike Leach Bowl with
Mm.
Washington State and Texas Tech. You've got two really high-powered offenses really doing it in somewhat the way that Leach used to. I mean, they scored 70 last week. I know it was Portland State, but when you watch Wazoo last week, they've got speed all over the field at receiver. And John Mateer, the guy who succeeded in Cam Ward at quarterback, I thought he was terrific. They're going to put up some points, I think, against Texas Tech, and this is going to be, I think, a shootout again. And if there's one thing that I do feel good about Texas Tech, it's offensively. I think they looked really sharp, and I think they have the potential to be a really elite offense this year because of all their weapons. Josh Kelly was great. Jalen Conyers was great. Taj Brooks is Taj Brooks. I think they have so many weapons now offensively that I think they'll be able to keep up in a shootout. But they've just got to be more disciplined. They had 11 penalties last week. They got to clean that up. They got to be better defensively. They had guys running wide open in the middle of the field, all kinds of grass for guys at ACU. They've got to get that fixed.
Yeah, Texas Tech is like the opposite of Iowa, like in every regard, right? And it's funny. Like last night, I was watching that game. I'm like, if Kirk Ferentz just turns this on for a second by accident, he's going, "Honey, I need my pills. Like, give me some Advil right now. I don't understand what I'm watching here." Yeah, they've got work to do. How do you feel about the two Big 12? I mean, there's three Big 12 SEC matchups this week. Oklahoma and Houston. Unfortunately for Houston, this is not the year they really want to be playing this game. And we don't really have to get into that one too much. But Oklahoma State's really good. Arkansas's got a coach backed into the corner, but they look like Arkansas might have some offensive firepower with Taylor Green running Bobby Petrino's system. And then the one that's a real toss-up is Mississippi State and Arizona State. Do you think the Big 12 can get at least one on the SEC this week? And then there would probably be Arkansas and Oklahoma State, but could they maybe get two?
Yeah, they could definitely get one. And I wouldn't be stunned if they got two. Certainly, Oklahoma State's hosting Arkansas. So that's one. It wouldn't be a shocker if Oklahoma State won that. I mean, they're a top 25 team. They got so much experience. Yes, Arkansas looked really good. Taylor Green looked good. Bobby Petrino looked good as the offensive coordinator, coming back for the first time in more than a decade. But this is going to be another level of competition, and it's not easy to play in Stillwater. We all know that. Boone Pickens is a really intense atmosphere, so wouldn't shock me if that one happened. The other one that's really intriguing is Mississippi State and Arizona State. Boy, ASU looked a lot better and a lot sharper than I thought they would. I think we all had them in our polls toward the very bottom. I think they were picked for last in the Big 12 in the preseason poll, and that's a team that looked clean and sharp. It wasn't just that, okay, they dominated Wyoming, who's typically has been one of the better group of five teams. Maybe they're not going to be as good this year. I don't know. But there weren't very many penalties. There weren't very many dumb mistakes. There wasn't a lot of the first game stuff that you normally see, the stuff that I talked about with Texas Tech. You didn't see that with Kenny Dillingham's squad at ASU last week, and I was really impressed by that. Now, can they repeat that against a Mississippi State team with this Jeff Lebby offense and Blake Shapen and all these guys are going to be running and, trying to chuck it down the field often? I'll be curious to see how ASU secondary stands up. But again, it's a long road trip. So, that's a game where maybe ASU can squeak it out. And Oklahoma and Houston, look, it's going to be a long season for Houston. I think we just kind of saw last week that's going to take some time over there for Willie Fritz.
Yeah. I mean, he's in this is normally like you could take over and do like a little bit of a reboot, but when the transfer portal era, it's just not that way anymore. You're either going to walk into a great situation, you're walk into one where you've got to build it up from the ground up, and outside of a couple players, it's really what he has to do. What are your thoughts on Colorado and Nebraska?
This is such a fascinating game to me because I still love Colorado's skill. Their offensive skill is terrific. You saw the O-line was not great, but a little bit better last week than it was last year. They only gave up one sack. The pressure rate was still high, but it was still lower than it was a year ago. And that to me is where it comes down to is, can they protect Shedeur? If they do, then they have a shot. If they don't, then this is one Nebraska can run away with, I think. But Nebraska, this game feels, and I know with Smokey, you probably have, gotten this sense, this is such a huge game for Nebraska because I think they're ready for this jump, the year two jump in the Matt Rule era. and they've been waiting so long to get back to relevance. And not to say that this game's going to get them there, but this is that game that I think can swing the mood one way or another. If you win it, then you're feeling really good if you're Nebraska. And if you lose it, then you're like, oh, here we go again. And this thing may not go as we hoped it would in year two, because their schedule after this, Nebraska's schedule is fairly manageable. So I think you have a chance to build some momentum here with the Cornhuskers. But I was interested and fascinated by Dylan Raiola. It would be nice to see him do a second start. UTEP hung with them a little early in the first quarter of that game before Nebraska eventually put away. But the speed that they have on the outside with Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair, buddy, they can hit some big plays. Last year they had that problem because the quarterback situation wasn't great, and they just didn't have the type of receivers that could go with Raiola and Nair and Banks, buddy. Now I think if they have to go play catch up with Colorado and play shot for shot, I think they can.
Yeah, I'm. That's the, when I pencil in the games, I'm definitely going to sit down and watch like it was the first one, because I'm so intrigued by the battle of styles here, and I want to see Colorado play against a team that will run the ball straight at them over and over again, and see how that alters their game plan. Because what we saw from them last week, Sam, was they're still exactly what we thought they were finesse wise, but in the trenches they're only slightly better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the place where Matt Rule's team is going to try to win. That's where they wanted to try to win that game last year, and I thought they hung in it early. They just didn't have enough offensive firepower to do it. But Matt Rule's team, you guys know it. You haven't seen it there firsthand. His team's going to be tough, and they're going to be strong and solid in the trenches. And if they win that battle up front, especially when Colorado has the ball, then I think it could get ugly for Colorado.
All right, two more games I want to talk about before we let you go. Cy-Hawk this week, very interesting. How much offense are we looking at for in this game?
more than we have in the past, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
Iowa scored 40 last week, which is not something we see very often, but I think this one's going to be fun. Losing Caleb Bacon, I think, is a little bit of a downer for Iowa State. He's going to be out for a while, so that one's going to be tough. But this is a good Iowa State team, and this to me can kind of stamp Iowa State as a Big 12 title contender. I think we keep them in that class of the top 6 that we think of teams that can go do it. If you go win this one in Iowa City, I think you look at yourself that way, and you also look at yourself obviously as a dark horse playoff contender. I think the same applies for Iowa. If they win this game, then maybe you can allow yourself to think about dark horse playoff contention down the road. And
finally, Baylor versus Utah. There's Rice Eccles. Baylor, did something that last year they haven't done or last week that they haven't done in about a year and a half, which is absolutely blow the doors off somebody. Now, I know it was Tarleton State, but going from not being able to do that at all, which they were not able to last year, to being able to do it is a positive step. I know that you can't put all your eggs in that basket, but if you're looking for optimism, I think that's a really good place to start, in that they couldn't do that to anybody last year, including Long Island, who plays TCU this week, that gave him a scare for a little bit. They eventually won that game, but it wasn't a blowout by any stretch of the imaginations. Do you think that they can hang with Utah, or is Utah too experienced for them to really stay in this game?
I think they have enough talent and enough experience to make it a game. And I'm with you. Yes, it's hard to take a lot away from the win against Tarleton, but I remember what that Long Island game looked like last year. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't inspiring. It wasn't something you watched and you're like, wow, this is a good team that if they just get it together, they'll be fine. That was a game that I kind of started to raise some concerns for me, even though it was already after a week after they had gotten beat by Texas State. Mm-hmm. So I think this team is a lot better. There's a lot more explosive. I think DeQuan Finn has been a good fit so far. I like some of the weapons that they added. I'm really intrigued by Michael Trigg, the tight end. They're a little bit different offensively than what we've been used to seeing the last couple of years, but I think that's good. And I think that gives them a shot to hang in the game if things get a little crazy. But this Utah team is better. I don't expect Baylor to go in and get the upset. This Utah team is better, more experienced, tougher, and gosh, it's really hard to win over there in Salt Lake City.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. I mean, it is loud. We got a bunch of people that are going. In fact, Grayson, not usually on with us right after this segment, not because he's on his way to Salt Lake City. I think is Ashley going? There's
I'm not sure.
I think so.
Honestly.
I know a ton of people going to this game just for the atmosphere. Like, I mean, whatever happens, but just for the atmosphere. Sam, are you on the road this week or are you at home?
I am at home, so I'll be enjoying the whole slate of games from my couch this week.
Yeah, that is. Look, I love being at games. I love it. But I guess now that maybe I'm in my 40s, given the opportunity to watch like 15 games, it's just so awesome. It is. And you miss it like when you're in a press box, and we all do it. Like as soon as you get a break, you run to the area where there's a bunch of TVs and you're like, trying to do it there, but it's not the same.
It's not. And the thing is, I'm at the stage now. This is my 20th year in the industry. I don't love doing back-to-backs. Like I did A&M and Notre Dame last week, which was fun, but it was a late night game and I got back about 2:00 in the morning. So this week being home is a good deal. And then maybe either next week or the week after we can go somewhere else. But I like kind of staggering it because if you're at one game, then you miss so much of the other ones. And so I like kind of bouncing back and forth between them. By the way, speaking of the game day atmosphere, the pregame introductions at Kyle last week were incredible. Like when they came out and they brought Power back, the Kanye West song, as the intro. And that I was really having chills on the sideline because of how crazy loud it got there on the sideline. So it was incredible atmosphere to be a part of. Obviously, it didn't work out for A&M that night, but it was really cool atmosphere. And those are the ones you'd like to be at just to feel that vibe in the stadium. But there's also, when I look at the slate of games this week, not just in the Big 12, but across the country, I'm excited to just be able to keep an eye on all of these from start to finish.
I can't wait to watch Michigan walk out against Texas. I mean, that's going to be a huge crowd pop there. But yeah, no, I'm with you, Sam. Sam, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks. Take care.
All right. Sam Kahn of The Athletic with us.